Just when you think Haason Reddick's decision-making can't get any worse, we get this breaking news today, this morning, from NFL insider Ian Rapoport. I'm Glenn Naughton with JetNation Radio and JetNation.com. Be sure to log into JetNation.com where you can register and become a part of what is the most active Jets message board on the web. So in case you haven't seen it, just came out a few minutes ago, popped up on the feed, had to come on and talk about this because this is just really unfathomable at this point. Let's see. The Jets apparently, because we've talked about what are the Jets doing? They're sitting on their hands. Get Reddick in here. Just make the guy an offer and make it happen. The Jets did. And apparently the Jets made such a good offer that his agents, Haason Reddick's agents, who have since fired him, were ready. They agreed to the deal, and it was Reddick who shot it down. Now, Rappaport doesn't tell us exactly what the numbers are, but the important part of what he tells us is that the offer the Jets made that Joe Douglas and Haason Reddick's agents had in place would have made him whole and then some. What does he mean by that? At this point, Reddick has racked up $9 million in fines. So you figure if this was a few weeks ago, it was probably $5-6 million. The Jets' offer was going to pay him back because they can't forgive the fines, remember, but they were going to pay him enough that it would have given him all the money back that he would have lost in fines, and then a pay raise on top of that, a one-year deal for him to come in, get a pay raise, have no fines, play his behind off, and maybe get himself a big deal in free agency. Maybe an extension with the Jets if he had played well enough. Well, Douglas made the offer. Reddick's agents liked it. They had accepted the offer. Reddick is the one who came back and said, not good enough, need more. This from a guy, remember, who said he was prepared to come in and play on the deal he had. So disingenuous to say the least. Maybe Haason Reddick doesn't want to be in the NFL anymore. And Chris says in the chat, Reddick wants to retire, doesn't want to play football anymore. It's an Antonio Brown situation. It could be, but if that's the case, Chris, why not just retire? Because you're getting fined all the money you're due anyway, so you're not making any money. Just make it official and retire. But he's not done that. He continues to. I'm assuming he's going to go out and get some agents. But listen, who knows? This could be just a. I mean, the situation just keeps getting more and more bizarre. If you think back, I said before camp, I was confident this would get done. If a guy is holding out in the name of money, he's not going to then sit home and get fined nearly $900,000 a week. Like I thought, okay, he'll show up week one, he'll pout, he'll say whatever, but it. All right, we're gonna go microphone free because this microphone might be dead. This thing's been doing this to me for a couple weeks now. Hope everybody can hear me now. So what I was just saying is that Ian Rapoport puts this story out saying that the Jets and Reddick had this deal agreed upon, and it can't get any more bizarre. The amount of money this guy has lost and now had the opportunity to make it all back and then some. So what is the point of what Haason Reddick is doing here? If Haason Reddick was doing this because he wanted more money, and then he puts himself in a position where he's going to lose at that point, we're probably looking at $6 million. The Jets give him that money, and then they give him more money on top of that. And his agents are like, hey, man, we got your deal. Let's go. And his answer is no. And now, as I said, it is now at the point where his agents have fired him because he's not returning their calls. That was another comment the other day from Ian Rapoport, or it may have been Adam Schefter. I forget which one of those two were on that particular report, but saying that agents, family, friends, everyone in Haason Reddick's life was telling him, get into camp, go report. And not only did he not do it, he's gotten to the point now where he's not responding to anybody who's telling him to go in and report and trying to advise him. So Reddick is shutting everyone off and turning down a deal that would have gotten him what he wanted, which was more money. So I don't know what the guy thinks he's doing at this point. Mike says he never wanted to play for the Jets, and maybe he didn't. He did come into the building. He did stand up. And listen, I understand guys lie. I get that. But he could have not spoken. He could have been, you know, he wouldn't have had to lie to the level that he did. That, yeah, once I get here, it's, I'm going to be here because that's the type of guy I am. And we're going to get it on and look out and blah, 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 blah. And then he just ghosts the team and ghosts his agent. It's this. We had already referred to this. We had already said that this was one of the weirdest holdouts we'd ever seen. This might make it even weird. And breaking news, in case you missed it the other day, Reddick is also being sued now in court with filings that claim he got involved in a business deal where he owed someone, I think it was $1.3 million. And when the guy asked about the money, Reddick sent like a dozen gloved goons to go explain to him that Reddick wouldn't be paying him anything. So he might be losing some more money here through the court system if he doesn't settle that. Again, that was reportedly $1.3 million. He's at roughly $9 million in fines now. Refused a deal that would have gotten it all back for him. I have nothing left to say about this other than, and we've talked about. I said it the other day. I've talked about when I've discussed the Joe Douglas Haason Reddick thing. I've always said something is up because there's no way in the world Joe Douglas values Woody Johnson's money more than he values his job. Like, he traded for Haason Reddick. He wanted Haason Reddick. And he had to be, even if Reddick said, I'll come in for whatever amount, there had to be a part of Joe Douglas that thought, if this goes sideways, we're going to have to pay a little. It went sideways. And Joe Douglas tried to pay a lot. Joe Douglas tried to give back all of his fine money and a pay raise on top of it. And Reddick still says no. I don't know what more should Joe Douglas offer him $150 million a year? Or like at what point do you say, you know what? The player maybe isn't all there. The player, or maybe the player was never going to play here for whatever reason. And Mike says, check his mental state, concussions. And I don't mean to make light of it. And I don't mean to throw stuff out there like this. My point is, what he is doing is so illogical and so far from what you would expect from any behavior, from any normal person, that it's like, what is going on here? Is there something that happened behind the scenes that we don't know about? I don't know what could happen to be so bad that you're turning down an extra, 10, 11, 12 million for 1 year. And I throw that number out there because, again, we're talking the fines. Well, I guess now they're at 9, but as I said, they were probably at around 6 when the offer was made. But the Jets would have had to bump his pay up by $6 million to make up for that. And then Rap Sheet said another chunk on top of that to make him whole. So maybe you're talking 9, 10 million total on top of the fact he's already making 15. So what, they were going to give him, let's go low end and say they were going to give him 22 million for the year. That's bad. Like, that's on Joe Douglas. He should pay him 30 million a year for a guy who you haven't seen for a day in your building. You don't know what kind of shape he's in. You haven't seen him in your system. Just not a good deal for him. Not a good situation. Michael Fox says, like someone else said, could refuse to do the physical, and that would have nullified the trade. None of this makes sense. Perhaps he has personal problems. Again, Michael, this is the thing. This is where you're left, right? You don't want to speculate and say all kinds of crazy stuff, but the behavior is so irrational that that's what you're left with. You can't look at the way all this is unfolding and go, oh, okay, I get where he's coming from. Yeah, that makes sense. No, none of it makes any sense at all. So, obviously, and I'm assuming, this is probably stuff that the agent had kept in-house while they were still the agents because, you're representing a guy, you're not going to leak his info. But then you fire him, maybe they're a little more willing to talk, and Rap Sheet makes a phone call, and they go, hey, man, here's what happened. Like, last time we dealt with this guy, we thought we had a deal in place, and he shot it down. Since then, he doesn't return our phone calls, so we had to move on. So, again, he said he would come in and play under his current deal. When it became clear that wasn't going to happen, the Jets apparently made him a monster offer that his agents agreed to. He then said no. And as Rap Sheet says in his article, at that point, the Jets had no choice but to say, all right, well, we'll just wait and hope he shows up. And I think it could be possible this guy doesn't play again. Again, which sounds crazy. This is a guy at the top of his game. It's hard to imagine somebody being, in a position to make $20+ million a year, but walking away from it because it's not 25, 26. And that's what I'm saying, Mike. It's so irrational that I generally don't speculate on, like, oh, is this guy take too many shots to the head or something like that. That's normally some territory I stay away from. But this is just that. What's someone? If I'm wrong, if somebody out there disagrees with me and says that thinks I'm being out of line, then by all means, tell me where what Haason Reddick is doing makes sense and where the Jets have gone wrong. The Jets traded for the guy. The Jets told him they would talk about a deal. And what this means is the Jets are the side. They budged, right? The Jets said you need to come in if you want a pay raise. And he held out. And eventually the Jets said, fine, here's your pay raise. You haven't been in the building, but here's your money. Now come in and play on a one-year deal and prove it, and we'll go from there. And he says, no, that's not good enough. That, again, Peter says it's rare the Jets are in the right, but in this case, how anyone in their prime can walk away from this once-in-a-lifetime earning opportunity is beyond description. This is what I mean. It already made no sense weeks ago. It made no sense week one when he didn't show up. When you start, look, you're getting the 50 grand a day, which that adds up. That's a few million. But you're going to start costing yourself almost $1 million a week. What is it? It's like 800-900 grand a week that he loses, that he doesn't show up. And we're supposed to say or talk about this like this is a rational person. It's not rational. He's not being rational. The Jets really to give up a third rounder and then offer a guy a huge pay raise to come in and he says no, that stings. Like you've lost a third round pick for nothing. That's rough. But this is going to get interesting when he doesn't show up and the Jets, well, will they own his rights next year? That's a conversation. I've heard people say it, and I've heard other people say not necessarily the case, and nobody really seems to know. Nobody is, well, I take that back. Rich Cimini did have a former agent on his Flight Deck podcast a couple of weeks ago talking about it and said there is a precedent. I believe Joey Galloway, somebody like that, years ago, held out and came back at like week 9 or 10, whatever it was, and an arbitrator decided he could still hit free agency. So that's not a rule, but it is a precedent. So if Reddick were to go beyond that, he sort of enters new territory where maybe an arbitrator will say, no, you're not. And this, I don't know how this impacts his case if it goes to arbitration, but if you're the Jets and you can show that you negotiated in good faith and you made him an offer that was a huge pay raise that was going to A, get him back his fine money, and B, give him a raise on top of that, the arbitrator can say, look, you're the one being unreasonable here. Like they offered you a deal that gave you a significant pay raise and saved you fine money, and you still didn't come in. Why should you get free agency after that? Why should you be granted a chance to shop your services when you didn't negotiate in good faith with a team that gave up a third round pick for you? So this makes the situation really, really interesting. Again, Jets lose a 3, make a monster offer contract wise. The fact that the agency agreed to it, and it was Reddick who said no. And that's, again, why wouldn't you fire the guy at that point? What are you there for? If you're there working for the player, negotiating on his behalf, and you negotiate what you believe to be a fair deal, and he then shoots it down, and there's no end in sight to this situation, and all you're doing is accumulating fines, what value do you have to the agency? And you're not returning their calls. Reddick is doing some wild stuff here, folks. Let's see. I was watching the ESPN doc about a wide receiver that pulled the same stunt. His agent quit on him too, and he never played again. Oh, I wonder who that was. Because I mentioned Galloway, who did play again. Came back and got his contract. I don't recall that one. But yeah, here's a guy in his prime. So I'm just it's nice to hear because it really just a week or two ago I said on this show, and I think I tweeted it out. I said there's no way Joe Douglas values Woody Johnson's money more than he values his job, because Joe Douglas's job is on the line. And all it would take to get Haason Reddick into camp is some more of Woody Johnson's money. Why wouldn't Joe Douglas be offering that? Well, now we have our answer. Joe Douglas did offer a bunch of Woody Johnson's money to Haason Reddick. Haason Reddick's agent said, yes, sir, we will take that. And it was Reddick who then turned around and said, no, thank you. I'm not taking that money. I'm not taking the forgiveness of the fines. I'm not taking the pay raise. I would rather continue sitting out. And as I said, as Rap Sheet mentioned, at that point, the Jets didn't really have a choice. This is the early 80s, played for the Raiders. I'm gonna look into that, Michael Fox, because I don't recall that. We have to remember free agency changed so much in that time. But I don't recall that story. And it'd be interesting. Is it a player who was in his prime? Is it a player who was at the end of his career? Was it an elite player? Interesting stuff. I'm gonna look that up. But that's it, folks. Just want to share my 2 cents on this. It's a weird situation. It just keeps getting weirder. And whether or not this guy is going to be a Jet next year based on what an arbitrator, because I'm guessing it'll go to arbitration of some kind if he doesn't show up, or based on when he shows up. Maybe he does show up week 11, knowing that was, or I'm saying 11, but forgive me if I'm misremembering when it was that Galloway did report. In fact, I think I'm going to go back and listen to that Rich Cellini episode of Flight Deck where they broke that down a little bit. So that's it for this one. It's a football Sunday. Jets don't play. They got Buffalo tomorrow night. Hopefully manage to pull that one off. But the Reddick situation just gets weirder and weirder and weirder. Who knows where this story goes next? Have a good one, Jets fans.